Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tiesenghausen. It's May 10th today. Here's the top news at this hour. After yesterday's parade, where Putin spoke on behalf of veterans, claiming Russia will defeat everyone and always has, I thought it was the most dismal sight I'd seen in a long time. But Putin is a master at sinking even lower. Even when it seems there's no room left to fall, he still finds a way to do it. Then yesterday he decided to do a press briefing after the parade. That's where the portal to hell opened. I know you can't stand looking at the bald guy, but you really need to see this today. First, Kablukan explained why he started the war against Ukraine. And take special note that this version of Putin has a completely shameless lisp. I think all the replicants got the same dentures, but they didn't fit everyone. Take a look.
И стремясь использовать Украину как инструмент для достижения своих геополитических целей, эти деятели на Западе, они же всех обманывали. Публично же сейчас об этом говорят. И начали нас обманывать еще, что касается расширения НАТО на восток еще в начале 90-х годов. Ни шагу на запад нам говорили тогда, не сделает НАТО. Ну и что? Где? И вот все это вкупе, в совокупности спровоцировало сегодняшнюю ситуацию. Так что они с нами воюют.
What? NATO's eastward expansion provoked this war against Ukraine? What does Ukraine have to do with it? Is Ukraine even in NATO? Why don't you fight NATO directly then? So NATO, according to Putin, lied to him back in the early 90s, and 30 years later he decides to start a war with Ukraine, which has nothing to do with NATO. I'll just remind you that Putin came to power in the late 90s. Since then, there have been 6 waves of NATO expansion. 6! In 1999, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary joined NATO. In 2004, the biggest wave, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Putin didn't declare war on anyone then. In 2009, Albania and Croatia joined, still no war declared. In 2017, Montenegro joined NATO. In 2020, North Macedonia. And in 2023, Finland joined. He didn't even squeak, even though it's right on his border. And in 2024, Sweden. You have a problem with NATO? Then try fighting them. You underground coward? Well, honestly, how else can you call him? I'll go further. Let him try fighting NATO's founder, the United States. And here's another clip on why, according to Putin, Finland joined NATO. Listen to this.
Что имею в виду? Ведь я уже сказал, и мы все это знаем, что все рассчитывали на быстрый крах России. В течение 6 месяцев все должно было бы, по их мнению, развалиться. Предприятия должны были встать, банковская система должна была бы перестать работать, миллионы людей должны были оказаться на улице. У нас, кстати, самая низкая безработица из всех стран двадцатки, 2,2% до сих пор. И все рассчитывали что-то оттяпать у России, что-то хапнуть, извините за простоту выражения. Вот Финляндия зачем вступила в НАТО? У нас что, с Финляндией были какие-то территориальные споры? Нет. Все было давно решено. Ничего не нужно. И руководство Финляндии это прекрасно понимало. Чего в НАТО пошли? А в надежде, что здесь у нас все рухнет, а они тут как тут, цап-царап.
He judges everyone by his own standards. They want to grab everything, snatch territories, and so on. But that's not all. Putin explained in this very same press briefing, Putin explained why he didn't take Kiev in 3 days after all. Take a look.
Парафировали соглашение. Потом один коллега, ну, что скрывать, господин Макрон мне позвонил, сказал, что Украина не может подписывать такие документы исторические с пистолетом у виска. Это прямая речь. У нас запись разговора сохранилась. А что надо сделать? Ну, надо бы отвести войска от Киева. Ну, отвели. Тут же приехал еще один представитель шоу-бизнеса, тогдашний премьер Великобритании.
Oh, so that's what it is. Turns out Macron called him in 2022, said Ukraine can't sign documents with a gun to its head, and he, noble Putin, withdrew troops from Kiev. And then he says they fooled him, they fooled Putin again. NATO fooled him, Macron fooled him, Boris Johnson fooled him, who then came and fooled him again. When are you going to pop already? How much more can they blow you up? How nice. Okay, let's assume Putin is just that dim-witted. Everyone fools him. But when you withdrew troops from Kiev and realized Macron and Boris Johnson fooled you, why didn't you move them back to Kiev? Why didn't you bring the troops back and said, that's it, I don't believe you anymore, now I'll capture Kiev if I only want to and I'll swallow the moon? And why did the Russians flee from Kherson? Did Macron and Johnson call and fool you then too? And from near Kharkiv? From near Chernihiv? Macron called again and said, listen, just withdraw the troops from Kherson. And the Russians skedaddled from Kherson. Is that how it works? What's the excuse here? Putin, who doesn't use the internet, thinks that nothing is saved there, on that internet. How does he even imagine the internet? Let's remember. I have these clips, I'll show them to you now. How the troops of the Russian Federation advanced on Kyiv. How they were met and what really caused them to flee. Take a look. The first video is the destruction of a Russian column near Brovary.
Нитро.
Алло, Нитро для удара.
Передаю.
Нитро, я удар.
Алло,
Нитро, я удар. Слушаю тебя.
удар я Нитро. 6-й полк почти потерял.
Что?
6-й полк пока не могу доложить, пока собираю. Очень много потерь. Ждали. Голова колонны попала в засаду. Командир полка погиб. По остальным разбираюсь.
Сейчас как разберешься, всех соберешь, мне доложишь, как понял.
Оттуда били артиллерия, танки. С беспилотника, так я понял, байрактары летают. Остальным сейчас потерям разбираюсь.
This is just one of the few episodes of how the Russians got their asses kicked near Kyiv, and not just near Kyiv. Another short video, this is the destruction of a Russian military column in Bucha. The Russians drove into a narrow street back then, where they were literally blown to atoms, dozens of vehicles, just burned, hundreds of bodies. Just take a look, the whole street is packed with burnt-out Russian equipment.
Був вдома, побачив вікно, що їде колона російської техніки. Ми сховались, потім вони проїхали. Я виглянув, вони там стоять далі по вулиці. Там не знаю, скільки пройшло часу, не скажу точно. І вони почали їхати назад, і в цей час їх почали наші ЗСУ накривати. Я по часу, так точно вже не пам'ятаю, приблизно з 9 ранку гепало там пару годин, а потім вже до 5 вечора просто це БК все розліталося, тут горіло, літало, шматки тут за 500 метрів повилітали.
And that Botoxed centipede talks about a gesture of goodwill and how they withdrew the troops. Lying KGB filth. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important for the channel's growth. We are fighting Putin's propaganda, let's do it together. And besides, after subscribing to this channel, your hair becomes soft and silky, so be sure to subscribe. In this press briefing, Putin tried to say that everything is under control, but it looked somehow very uncertain. He even managed to give Armenia some advice on how they should run their state in Armenia. Well, look, let them hold a referendum in Armenia because something's not right. You see, Armenia is taking a European course, and no one even consulted Putin. Take a look at this advice.
И, на мой взгляд, было бы правильным, было бы и по отношению к населению, гражданам Армении, и по отношению к нам, как к главному экономическому партнеру, определиться как можно раньше. Например, провести референдум. Например, это не наше дело, но в принципе это вполне было бы логично провести референдум и спросить у граждан Армении, каков будет их выбор.
And what else, according to Putin, should Armenia do? I think that the day is not far off when the Russian military base in Armenia will cease to exist. And here's more on the same topic. Moscow is waiting for explanations from Yerevan regarding the fact that the Armenia-EU summit provided a platform for anti-Russian statements. By Zelensky, Peskov stated this. You know, I think I have enough subscribers from Armenia who will now explain to Peskov in no uncertain terms what kind of explanations are needed. I think don't be shy, just write in the comments what you think about Peskov asking Armenia for explanations. Well, taking this opportunity, I thank Armenia and its citizens for supporting Ukraine. We appreciate and remember this. I think many people yesterday, looking at this pathetic sight of a rushed, sad parade, a gloomy Putin, sparse stands, and few guests, had the feeling that the turning point has finally happened. I'll tell you more. Some Russians have also felt this. They've started somehow to speak of Putin with disgust. Time for the old man to retire, Pipa Pina. And that's the mildest of what I've read. So there was this kind of, definitely not a festive mood. A tired, irritated, grumbling old man who can no longer carry the burden he placed upon himself. And the defeat in this war, which is already quite obvious, Russians will blame entirely on him. Yes, I think there'll be some case against generals, then everyone will be blamed. They're already making arrests. I think they'll try to shift the blame onto someone, but in the end, Putin will be the main culprit. His own people, his own will accuse him. Just read the Russian military bloggers right now there. Well, the mood is far from victorious. It already feels like they're getting more and more gloomy every day. And notice what Putin was doing yesterday in front of the propagandists, what he did at that press briefing. He was making excuses. We always wanted peace. It was Macron who asked to withdraw the troops. So he was saying why he didn't take Kyiv, why he didn't do this, why that, why things are bad there. So he was making excuses, and more excuses. We were fooled, and how? Yes, we were. It was that cursed NATO that fooled us. You've been in power for a quarter of a century, even longer. You've seen various United States presidents. You had plenty of time. Just a whole lot of it, a huge amount of resources that you, Putin, simply flushed down the toilet in a few years of this war. And notice, he also flushed down the toilet the equipment that he inherited from the Soviet Union. What appeared under Putin? 10 Armata tanks? All these cartoons he shows about Burevestnik, Poseidon, or whatever else, those are all Soviet developments, just modernized in some places. Half of them don't even exist. Under Putin, these 10 Armata tanks, where are they now? They didn't show up at the front, nor at the parade. Tens of thousands of pieces of Soviet-era equipment burned in this senseless war. So he took everything. He took everything he got from the Soviet Union and burned it in this inglorious war. According to various estimates, up to 85% of the Russian Federation's tank fleet at the start of the full-scale war was of Soviet origin. I think it's all 90. It's the same story with the planes. With the fleet, it's even sadder. And most importantly, the bunker commander missed the time and opportunities. I mean, he didn't just freeze the situation, he rolled it back by decades. Right now, the process of the Russian Federation's cascading collapse has become irreversible. The consequences of this war will finish Russia from within, and Ukraine will finish it from without, since now there's definitely something to do it with. And also notice how a real war has nullified all this pompous, blathering world diplomacy. How the roles of superpowers have changed, the attitude towards what the leaders of these superpowers say. After World War II, everyone lived in the illusion that, if anything, the US will save us. That's how it was. And for a while, they even thought that Russia was a superpower. Not everyone, though. And the war in Ukraine became a mirror reflecting absolutely real roles and the real state of affairs and the real weight of those statements that we hear. I will end this war in 24 hours. I'll get them to the negotiating table. I have a great relationship with both one and the other. I'll talk them into it in no time. But we remember this, don't we? We remember. And neither this war nor that war was ended by anyone in 24 hours. That's another piece of bad news for Putin, by the way. Ukraine is no longer looking back at Trump. I mean, Ukraine has adapted and victory is being forged by Ukrainian warriors, Ukrainian engineers, the Ukrainian home front with active help from European partners. Pardon my French. Now meet until you're blue in the face in your anchorage, play your old man games there, give each other portraits, rings, flowers, treat each other to croissants. It doesn't matter anymore. Build tunnels named after your dear selves. It doesn't matter anymore, and it won't help anymore. By the way, just yesterday when I was reading your comments under yesterday's video, and there are over 1,000, I think even over 1,500 already. To yesterday's video, I came across a very accurate comment. Russians compare this war with that war, somehow trying to link them together. And this accurate comment, it destroys this whole shaky structure that Russians are trying to patch up with blue electrical tape, spit, some scotch tape, something else, wrap it with wire. These two wars don't connect and never will. Here's the comment. The Russians completely destroyed my city of Bakhmut, but the Germans didn't. You see, Putin has outdone Hitler even in this war. And how accurate is that, right? And what relation does this Kremlin ghoul even have to the victory over Nazism? And why is he even speaking on behalf of veterans from the podium? A podium that stands on bones, with Lenin's corpse lying right there in the mausoleum. What kind of madness is this anyway? And why does modern Russia try to claim the credit for the victory? When 15 republics fought and over 50 countries helped during the war, has everyone forgotten that? And Ukraine and Belarus were among those who took the first and main blow. The entire front line from 1941 to 1943 was mostly on the territory of Ukraine and Belarus. Let's be honest, modern Russia and its Chekist leaders have no right at all to speak of that victory. You can't celebrate victory over Nazi Germany while repeating exactly what Nazi Germany did, and the outcome will be the same. Now, right now, Ukraine is being helped by countries of the former anti-Hitler coalition, because the modern Hitler unfortunately hasn't died yet and hasn't shot himself in a bunker, and Ukrainian warriors are performing a true feat on the front line right now. And in every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we continue the fundraiser for the Freedom of Russia Legion, which is fighting for Ukraine, a fundraiser for the repair of damaged equipment. Legion fighters are now fighting in almost all the hotspots. But it's also important that the legionnaires are hitting the enemy not only at the front, but also deep in the rear. The Legion commander, the legendary Caesar, has recorded an address to you. Please listen.
Дорогой Борис Тизенгаузен, уважаемые подписчики его канала, от имени бойцов Легиона Свободы России я хочу поблагодарить вас за всю ту помощь, которую вы нам не раз оказывали. Сейчас я снова обращаюсь к вам за помощью. Нам нужны средства на ремонт наших автомобилей, нам нужны средства на закупку БПЛА. Мы будем вам очень благодарны и в этот раз. Вместе с вами мы обязательно победим. Слава Украине! Свобода России!
Let's help our legionnaires. The donation link is in the description of this video. There's Mono and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. And there's always a QR code in the corner. It leads to the fundraiser. That's in case you're watching me on other channels. And in every episode, I say a special thank you from me and from the hundreds of fighters you've already helped. You guys are just incredible. And together we are a great force. Remember that. Here's another nuclear Pokemon who decided to warn the world in advance that he'll destroy everything just in case. North Korea, according to media reports, has established an automatic nuclear response in the event of the assassination or incapacitation of Kim Jong Un or a threat to the nuclear forces command and control system. The wording goes like this. If the command of the nuclear forces is under threat of attack, a strike must be launched automatically and immediately. Oh, how scared he got, huh? I think Kim Jong Un looked at Iran, at Venezuela, and realized that he could be next. Yes, he has nuclear weapons. The only safety catch why he's still running around and polluting the sky and threatening everyone. All this, automatically, immediately, if anything happens, I'll destroy everyone. But if Kim Jong Un is whacked, then why respond automatically and immediately to anyone? To those who remain. Why? But fear has certainly appeared among many dictators now. The thing is, weapons have also changed. Why did Kim Jong Un get scared? Well, imagine, weapons are completely different now. A manhole cover flies up somewhere and a drone flies out, which was delivered and installed there several months ago, and the drone chased after the nuclear mama's boy across the square. Well, Kim Jong Un apparently won't run far. This time he didn't even go to see his buddy Putin on his armored train. Dictators are sitting in their holes. They sensed something was wrong. And Putin also tried to back out of the prisoner exchange during this press briefing. That is, he tried to say that this exchange might not even happen. What a scumbag, right? Let me remind you, the agreement was for a prisoner exchange of 1,000 for 1,000, which is why he was allowed to hold this parade. I think that's largely why they allowed it. Do you know what he stated? I'll quote, "We in principle might not even do this." They might not do it. And here's the question. Don't you need thousands of Russians? And here is exactly the key answer. They don't need them, you see? They don't need thousands of Russians. Why is he blackmailing us? Why is he questioning that this exchange can happen? Because he doesn't need them. He doesn't care about 1,000 or 100,000 Russians. He's killed over 1 million in this war. What 1,000 Russians? Besides, for them, those who were captured are traitors. They're bad people. Here we welcome our heroes. But for them, only recently have they started giving them Russian flags. Well, they were traveling and knew that immediately, right after the meeting, they'd be sent to some meat grinder assaults. And they don't need Russians. And what is Ukraine doing? Ukraine is setting conditions. Fine, you'll hold your, ghastly parade, but you'll return 1,000 of our defenders. The parade happens and Putin says, well, we might not even do that. Compare Ukraine's desire to bring back its defenders with Putin's absolute indifference, like, well, we might not do it. I'll also remind you that Putin came to power on the back of apartment bombings with Russians inside, to justify the Chechen war, to create a demand for a strong hand back then. So what fates of Russians can we even talk about? If he blew up their homes with Russians in them, over 300 people, including children, died then, just to come to power. Remember his words about the Kursk submarine, about those Russian submariners. It sank, and he's smiling with that moronic grin. Well, by the way, they also sent a shout out to Donald Trump here. The New York Times comes out with news that Russia is supplying Iran with drone components across the Caspian Sea. This supply is ongoing, and thus they're helping Tehran restore the military arsenal lost during the war, bypassing the American blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Remember how Donald Trump reacted the first time to Russia helping Iran? Remember how? He said then that Putin assured me that he's not helping Iran. He told me that over the phone. And I also remember a moment when Putin also told Trump over the phone that they wanted to send Ukrainian drones to his residence. They want to attack his residence in Valdai. He lied then. Donald Trump didn't believe him. They even published a US intelligence report saying that Putin is full of it. So it turns out when Trump wants to, he believes, and when he doesn't, he doesn't. I wonder if they'll believe it this time or not, that Putin will now stuff Iran with weapons again. And then what? We'll see. I think when they don't need to, they won't believe it, when it's inconvenient. And again, a typically Russian news item, I just couldn't pass it by. You all probably know about the Russian sovereign messenger Max, which Russians are being forced to switch to. This messenger, or rather through this messenger, Russians are being watched, they're being listened to. The goal is to move them from Western messengers to this one, so that all traffic and message exchange between Russians is fully controlled. Well, the channel market in the Kremlin's Max Messenger has begun to stagnate significantly, any post analysts say. According to their data, admins are returning to Telegram en masse due to weak ad sales and losses. At the same time, the Max Messenger has seen a sharp rise in fraudulent ads and the promotion of various casinos through major news channels. And I remember how they were creating not just a Telegram killer, but also a YouTube killer, a Facebook killer. They were creating them in Russia. Now, with the YouTube killer, there was a separate, very interesting story there. And not just once, they created many YouTube killers, including RuTube. So there was this project called Yarus. Yarus. It's a super platform, they announced. A super platform. Now, Yarus will destroy all Western networks and all video hosting sites. A Russian patriotic network. That's how they positioned themselves. Watch out, West, you're finished. After the full-scale invasion, they poured big money into it and started actively promoting and hyping it. And guess what happened next? In just 2 years, by 2024, the project practically died. Reports of bankruptcy and layoffs appeared. In short, the YouTube killer died before it was even born. That's what all import substitution in the Russian Federation looks like. Either a Chinese product with a Russian label, or a project where billions were embezzled, then which just fizzled out in a few years. And one more piece of news, this is where the Russian Federation is headed. The Ministry of Education of the Russian Federation has approved a concept for historical education for kindergartens, schools, colleges, and universities. So the document has already been sent to the regions, and they'll start implementing it on September 1st. The program is designed for 5 years and is aimed, at what? At the formation of an all-Russian civic identity. As part of the concept, they plan to hold events dedicated to World War II, which they call the Great Patriotic War, to the defenders of Russia and participants of the SMO. And how do they even imagine this? Just how? They're still trying to link World War II with this bastardized SMO of theirs. How are they going to do that? Look, children, Hitler was very bad. He attacked the Soviet Union, he bombed Ukraine. But Putin, he's like a good kind Hitler. He also attacked Ukraine, but that's completely different, children. How do they even imagine this? But by the way, in their textbooks, World War II, their version, The Great Patriotic War, still starts in 1941. There was no joint partition of Poland by Stalin and Hitler. Nothing. That's the kind of selective history they have. But they've already reached the kindergartens. From September 1st, kindergartens will have an equivalent of conversations about important things. In schools, it's conversations about important things, but in kindergartens, you know what it'll be called? Kind games. Judging by the Russian economy and the nosedive it has entered, these will be more like Hunger Games. But the fact that they've already started picking on kids in kindergarten, they're planning to brainwash them starting from kindergarten? Russians should really think about what's happening, but it seems many simply can't do it physically. That balding ghoul is planning to take your children, Russians, and drag them into the grave with him. That is the reality. In Russia, they should be praying for Ukraine and Ukrainians so that we can drive into the black heart of this ghoul, an aspen stake. And Ukraine will definitely do that. As for you, friends, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. And I'm asking you, please, let's help the Legionnaires. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Our help is very much needed by them right now. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.